1st, 2023. David, call the roll.
Ball. Jensen.
Present.
Maroney. Present. Scott. Zierden.
Present. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right. Do I have a motion for the amendment of the agenda?
Yes, I will make a motion to add the Hart service contract onto the agenda, item 9E.
Is that a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Nay. Motion carries. All right, so we will go ahead and open up.
Madam Mayor, just a point. The motion was to add 9 that to 9E. We should probably have a second motion to actually approve the agenda as well.
Okay,
Just to clarify, because that motion only said to add it.
okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the amended agenda with the addition of 9E.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now we will move into open forum. So anyone have anything not on today's agenda? Go ahead and come up and state your name and address.
My name is Tim Scari. I live on Winter Trail here in Breezy Point. I had sent the council and the city administrator an email regarding zoning over on White Overlook, specifically the parking lot for the golf course. I know the golf course is off limits tonight, and I understand that, but my issue is to see how there's going to be a response to my email regarding the zoning and how that was worked out, how that was finagled. I do own 4 lots over there. So my question and my follow-up to my email is, when will I get an answer to that? I did try to call the city administrator this morning and left a message to see how to proceed tonight, and I didn't receive a call back. So other than a call back, I just decided to show up and ask those questions.
Okay. Do you want to?
Yeah, and I got your later today, Mr. Scari, but I did actually, you should also have I did have an email response to you also, so that should be in your inbox, just so you're aware.
Where is that?
I sent
Email response.
today.
Okay.
Yes, you have the email response, and I'll just tell you what was in the email, and also the public know. So the city did purchase those lots in July 24th of 2020 at the public auction, as you did say in your email. So it's confirming that yes, we did. And the council did purchase those lots for the purpose of being a supportive use, public use to the city's 40 acres of dedicated public land. Normally the process in the past is that obviously we would buy a lot normally to get rezoned public. I can't really, say exactly what happened. I wasn't here at that time as to why they didn't immediately get rezoned. But we actually have begun the process to have those parcels rezoned.
You now have begun the process.
Yes.
What about the process a year and a half ago? Notifying the adjacent owners. Is the city allowed to rezone property to make big parking lots when it's residential? Can they just go ahead and do that?
It's a decision up to the council. It's at the end of the day, I'll resort.
But you say you're now moving to do it now.
Yes, we're going through the process to properly, and I want to clarify, it's actually that property and all city-owned properties that are not owned open public. So all cities, we're doing a cleanup of all our city lots, of looking at if it's city-owned, it should be zoned public. And so we're doing that process. Again, the process as it is has to go before the Planning Commission. Planning Commission considers it, makes a recommendation, then it goes to the council. Council is the final authority on all these things. These lots will be at the next week's May 9th planning commission meeting at 7 o'clock. It's been probably noticed per state statute. There'll be a public hearing. You and any member of the public is welcome to attend and make comment. And then the council will, at a following meeting, take whatever recommendation that the planning commission makes. So that's, all I can say is that's the process.
It appears to be a classic cart before the horse when you tear down all those trees and there's a parking lot there, and now we're gonna go through the process. That's all I've got to say about it. Questionable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else today?
Nobody else? Briefly, Gary Bakken, 29464 Shoreview Lane, Breezy Point. It's my asthma, or the
Allergies.
pollen. I'm here today to ask this council and mayor to reinitiate, if you will, the Citizen Award. We've got many people have not been recognized. Steve Jensen is privy to this, and that's all I would ask is that the Citizen of the Year award be started over. We ran out of people and it fizzled, as Deb says, it fizzled. Kathy moved to Cross Lake, and I ask that out of respect. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
No questions?
All right, anybody else? All right, we will close the open forum. We'll move to approving the consent agenda. I have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second?
All right. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, moving on to the Personnel and Finance Committee report. Administrator Chansky.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So item for you tonight is regarding looking at engaging with Baker Tilly for municipal advisory services. Really what this is for in the master services agreement that's attached to this item is really for two projects regarding City Hall and the Bushman Road. The reason we're looking to bring in Baker Tilly is what they do, again, as municipal advisors. They provide guidance or advice to the council as to not whether you should do a project, but they take the projects, the information we have, the projects, and specifically in this situation, the facility assessment on City Hall, and then with Bushman Road, once the preliminary design is done, take the estimated costs for those projects, and they do different scenarios for the council as to what it would cost to do those projects and different ways that those projects can be funded, and they provide all the information on that funding. So again, you can see with each project, copied directly from the MSA, what they would be providing with each one. City Hall, they're going to be studying the alternative cost scenarios based off of the three potential options. WSN will be providing, identify potential funding sources, financing strategies, financial feasibility, and then recommending and structuring finance obligations if the council were to decide to go down that route. And the same thing with Bushman. They look at the different cost scenarios depending on how many they come that WSB brings forth. Again, considering finance options, potential funding sources, feasibility analysis, and then also what obligations, so debt obligations would look like should you choose to do that. As with any project like this, they're all great. It all comes down to financing at the end of the day. So the role of Baker Tilly is to provide the in-depth analysis. They're financial experts and provide you with the information regarding the financing of any of these two projects, as they are large projects. There is a fee with each one, as you can see, $3,500 to $4,500 for City Hall, depending on how deep they go, and some ancillary costs, and then $2,500 to $3,500 for Bushman Road. These costs have been incorporated into the project costs already as well. I've worked with Baker Tilly, and specifically Michaela Huat and Paul Steinman, who would be our primary individuals that we're working with this city. They do have fantastic work. And so I am tonight recommending that the council approve the attached master services agreement with Baker Tilly for municipal advisory services. I'll take any questions that you might have.
When you talk about funding sources, does this include grants as well?
Potentially.
Okay.
So they're going to look at everything, we're going to provide them with pretty much all our financials, and they're going to tell you what's out there, whether or not, cash on hand is the best option, debt obligations, what other mainstream funding opportunities might there be out there?
Do you know if the city has used any companies like this in the past?
We have.
Okay.
For different projects. We've used David Brown and Associates previously for some of the TIF projects we've done as well. So it's very common to use these people. And then also in their master service agreement, there's also a fee schedule that should we choose to issue any kind of debt, they help prepare that debt. They work with our bond counsel, the attorney that would draft it. They go out there, put it out for sale, do all that, manage our debt as part of their process. So they're experts in all of that, and they keep us on the straight and narrow when it comes to debt.
Right. Anyone else have any comments on it?
None for me.
No? Right. Do I have a motion to approve the services agreement with Baker Tilly?
Also move.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. All right, moving on to Safety and Public Works Committee report. Mr. Jachansky?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So tonight, there's kind of this item is multifaceted. So on April 10th, the Ideal Township Board of Supervisors did unanimously vote to join into Phase 1 of the Bushman Road project, so that's preliminary design. When the council approved the original contract with WSB for Phase 1 of the project, at that time, it did not include the shared portion of Bushman on the western end, just about a half mile, where that is shared between Breezy Point has the south side of the road, Ideal Township has the north side, because we weren't sure if Ideal was going to join in on that process. We engaged them, we sat down and had a conversation with them, myself, Assistant Minister Ike, Paul Sandy with WSB, and then Paul and I attended the Township Board meeting on April 10th and did unanimously vote to join in. So there's two things that need to be approved regarding this. One is the attached contract amendment to add this on. The contract is a little over $66,000 for this section that would be split 50-50 between the city of Breezy Point and Ideal Township. Again, when I set the budget for this, we kind of anticipated that this might come in, and especially with some of the other things I'm going to get to here, and Paul will talk about, we're going to be well within budget for that piece for Phase 1 for what I've budgeted. So we need to do the contract amendment and then the attached shared services agreement between the city and Ideal Township, because how it works is since we already have the contract with WSB, we're going to stay as the contract holder. So they'll do all the work, they will invoice Breezy Point, and then we will in turn invoice Ideal Township for their portions of the road. Also, that shared service agreement means anything regarding that shared portion before the work can be done. Not only does the council have to approve it, the Ideal Township Board has to approve it. So when it comes to like preliminary design, when that comes, everyone has to be in agreement for that portion before any further work. If there's any contract change orders, it's the same thing. Breezy Point has to approve it and Ideal has to approve it before it can be approved, just for that section of road. So again, everything is 50-50 for that section. So I think those are the two big things. One thing I will address quickly, I know Paul will probably talk about it a little bit as well. With the addition of Ideal, the projected timeline we had for this project is changing a little bit. So originally when this was approved, the anticipated timeline, the idea was Phase 1, we get Phase 1 done, preliminary design early summer. The council take a quick break to review and then make the decision whether or not to move forward. And then we would do Phase 2 in the fall, Phase 2 being final design and engineering, to be able to go for bid in about January of 24 with a goal of potentially doing construction in the summer of 2024. With Ideal being on board now, it's gonna stretch it a little bit, and actually I think Paul and I agreed that actually it's probably a good stretch of now what we're looking at is phase 1 in 2023. And then we'll get that done, gives council plenty of time and Ideal Township to review and make a decision. Then phase 2 in 2024, then construction in 2025. Main reason for that is big part is for Ideal Township's funding. They don't have the funds in 2023 to do phase 1 and 2. So the idea is they had money this year to do phase 1, they would then budget for phase 2 in 24, and then fully fund for construction in 25 should we go that far. I think overall it works out better, you know, gives the council more time to fully consider the project, public engagement and all that. So now it's kind of moving into a 3-year project with the addition of Ideal. So I think what we're looking for tonight, Paul is also here to give you a full project update of what WSP's been up to. But before we do that, I would appreciate motions on the shared service agreement and the contract amendment.
Do you want separate motions, or can they be in one?
They can be in one. My only request is that you make the contract amendment, they're already working on things, but just make it contingent on Ideal Township signing the shared services agreement, which they will do next week. I've already talked about it with them. They have it in their hands, but their board does not meet until next Monday.
Anybody else have any questions of staff?
You guys have any questions on it?
None for me.
Okay.
Yes, make that motion. I'll make the motion to approve the amended contract along with the
Shared services.
shared service agreement pending what Ideal Township, as long as they come back in a favorable motion to move forward with it.
Works.
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. All right. You're up.
Good evening, everyone. Madam Chair, members of council. Again, David introduced me. My name is Paul Sandy. I'm Assistant Project Manager with WSP. Your project manager for the Bushman Road project. As I recall, back in January, I was in front of the board, kind of explaining the project and different tasks that are associated with it. As David kind of alluded to, this contract amendment that you guys just approved with Ideal Township is simply same exact pass as what you guys approved in January. It's just an extension of, basically we had another third of road, so we estimated our hours accordingly to not only go through all these tasks, the public engagement, the survey, the right-of-way acquisition, just for that extended 2,800 feet. So, understand that contract amendment is basically the same exact language that you guys, approved back in, I think 2022. So, getting into what we've been doing here in the past, 4 months. So kind of the first task that we did is I met with David and Daniel here at City Hall, and we kind of collected all of the existing information that we had on the roadway. So this was going back into the archives of City Hall, digging through a bunch of old files, maps and things, and trying to get an understanding of how Bushman Road has kind of taken shape over the years, what previous studies have been done, and kind of formulating that into what I call an existing conditions memo. I provided that to staff back in February, March, something like that. Along with that, we did deliver our quality management plan, which was a deliverable in task 1, which is basically WSP's commitment to the city to review all of our deliverables and kind of gives the process and how we go about internally reviewing and submitting those over to the city. In the past week, we have been on site. Some of you might have seen us out there. We've been doing topographic survey. We had to wait until the snow melted to be able to go out with our survey crews and start that process. We think we have about 3 days left on that, so we've been moving along pretty good with our surveyors. As far as the right-of-way and what we've been doing there, we have collected all of the title commitments from the title company as a pass-through expense. We've begun to put together the right-of-way mapping, which basically is taking all those title reports and finding section corners, property corners, and mapping all of that out. All that information will be used to kind of start that preliminary design and get a good understanding of how the project is impacting neighboring properties, dependent on what alignment options we choose. And from there, we would go into a right-of-way process or looking at which properties are being impacted by the road construction project. Geotechnical explorations are planned for this month of May. That is consisting of a drilling rig out on site, doing soil borings at select locations through the project area. You'll recall in the Bolton and Mink report, they did do some select soil borings to get a good understanding of what the soil conditions are. This is a more in-depth investigation with borings every 500 feet. And then there's a detailed report that comes with that shows soil conditions, groundwater elevations, and provides a pavement recommendation for the section of roadway dependent on what the city's needs are as far as heavy vehicle traffic and things. Public engagement, this has been kind of one of the bigger processes we've started on, have been going through with the city. We held a kickoff meeting with David and Daniel on April 15th. We went over a draft stakeholder list, which is basically we went into a GIS and we mapped out all the potential stakeholders that could be involved with this project. That includes residents, school district, emergency services, businesses, anyone that's along the corridor that could be impacted by road construction. That list will be continually updated, and we'll be getting contact information for those people along the corridor to make sure they're invited to public open houses and are able to get my contact information along with the cities to answer any questions that they might have about the project. We showed David and Daniel a draft website, which we were making a few modifications to with Ideal Township being added on now, that we're hoping to go live on May 15th. Moving on, the wetland delineation work that was completed with the Bolton and Mink study, that was a full wetland delineation report, and that was submitted to the LGU for concurrence on wetland boundary and type. So that phase of the investigation is complete. We do have an approved wetland boundaries on the site, and we'll be using that information once we get into final design. And finally, our preliminary design, we're hoping to start around the end of May, once we get all of these investigations completed. So survey, geotechnical, existing right-of-way. Once we have all of that known, we'll start putting alignments into AutoCAD and start designing the roadway and kind of figure out what the right-of-way impacts are and be bringing stuff forward to the public engagement sessions that we have planned. I think the first public engagement activity we will have, besides the website, is tentatively scheduled for July 26th, I believe, and that's a public open house here at City Hall. And that, I think we currently schedule it at 6 to 8 p.m., but we'll solidify that as we get closer. I think that's all I have now. I guess for future councils, I'm just wanting to garner some feedback. Do you guys want this kind of report in a written memo, or does this work for you as far as becoming and bringing it? I can certainly do both if that's more preferable to the council or Mr. Chansky.
I think a written memo would be good just to have on record.
Yeah.
Question about the open house. How is it going to be structured? I mean, what are you telling the residents to come with exactly?
So what we typically see at open houses is they're they're not really structured. There's no formal presentation. We want people to come in and feel comfortable, not like they have to show up at a certain time, right, to attend a presentation or anything. So usually is what they contain are WSB staff, city staff, maybe members of the council that are there to help citizens either walk through the project. A lot of times questions will be very centered around their property, if their property is along the corridor. So really their stations kind of set up with poster boards kind of showing alignments, different roadway typical sections, so people can garner an understanding of how the roadway might change once the construction is complete. So pretty informal. We gather comments. The website will have a comment feature where you can basically scroll in like a Google map, place a pin on the map and make a comment on that also. So there's multiple ways that people can engage. It's just how they prefer. So usually it's like an open house type style for 2 hours where people can stop in.
On that, Madam Mayor, if I must add, one of the things the website that Paul alluded to that's going to be going live on May 15th, it's it's an informative, so people can go there and look at project updates and stuff, but it's also a public engagement tool. So it walks people through the history of the project, what's the goal of this stage in the project, and as you kind of click through it, it ends with, it looks kind of like a GIS type map at the very end, but it's interactive, where people can actually click on it and leave comments. So people can leave a comment of, pro something, against something, if there's a very specific part of the road, they can click on it and they can leave a comment there. So it's also an interactive and a public engagement tool as well. Obviously, when the website goes live, as we finalize the details for the open house, we'll be doing lots of communication. We talked about mailers, direct mailers, specifically to those along the corridor, and we even opened it and we discussed not just those on Bushman, but those that require Bushman for access. So opening up that bubble of not just the specific Bushman properties, but those also who use Bushman on a daily basis to access their properties. So we are opening that bubble up a little bit to engage pretty much everyone in that immediate area. Obviously not the entire city, but everyone kind of that would be immediately affected by the Bushman.
Yeah, that was my next
project.
question, how we were gonna
Yeah.
allow people to know that this was actually going on, so.
I have a question. It's not for Paul. I believe it would be for Councilmember Maroney in the Road Committee. The historic speed studies, I had Chief Sandell pull those about a year and a half ago. It didn't come back with a lot of data. I mean, a couple accidents, a few speeding tickets. What I think should happen, since construction is delayed until 2025, that the city or the road committee look into using the device to track speed, and let's get a current data or a speed study on that road, and not forget about the historical data. We have 3 years, let's get current data.
I agree with that.
It would be very helpful for design too, if you guys have that ability, like a speed
Yes.
radar feedback that
Right.
collects. It would be helpful for us to know and how we can maybe implement design changes to help calm
Exactly.
speeds down and slow speeds. Obviously, our, transportation team will be looking at that and how to improve safety on the corridor from a sight distance perspective mostly. But obviously, if there's a speeding issue on that roadway, we would certainly appreciate that data.
Does WSB, I know ours is radar? Our speed sign is radar, I believe.
Yes,
Radar. I know when other traffic studies are done, there's usually a strip down. Does WSB have that ability that can do a more accurate speed study?
That's
Just out of curiosity.
for traffic counting, that's not necessarily for
So that's
speeds.
the only traffic, okay.
Yep.
Are we
Yep.
doing that too? Are we
So
doing-
there are traffic counts that were provided in many of the previous studies, most recently in the Bolton and Mink study that we will be utilizing to forecast. Usually it's a 10-year kind of forecast on how that growth might happen for traffic, and we'll incorporate that into the design as we get to that point.
Again, I think current numbers would be appropriate for a traffic study. I mean, there's the devices that you can run the tube across the road, the rubber piece, and gather that, because we're basing this off old information. And like I said, the data I pulled that I had Chief Sandell pull, it doesn't support speeding or a lot of traffic. I think speeding is there. I'm not saying that it isn't, but we don't have the empirical data, and we don't have accurate traffic counts, which to proceed with this project and make good decisions, we need both of those.
So from a traffic, I don't think the Bolton and Mink report address speeds necessarily, but I know it did address traffic counts, so that would have been
I
done
don't think
in.
it addressed speeds either.
I think it referenced speeds, but they didn't actually do a speed study.
Right.
But if the council wants, myself and Joe and Chief Sandell can definitely look at getting the speed sign out there. I don't think we have a plan for it at the very moment. And we can figure out the best spots. And we can work with Paul too to figure out with that kind of a system, especially with the hilliness of that road, where's the best spots to put it to try to get the most accurate speeds. don't necessarily want to put it right at the bottom of the hill, because then you're going to get speeding. Top of the hill is probably going to be slow. Figuring out the exact spots for it, we can
But
work
don't-
together and figure that out.
Wouldn't you also get counts of vehicles? I mean, it's gonna have both, right? It's gonna have the average speeds, but it can,
Yeah, it lists the vehicles as well, so you'd
yeah.
have a count.
So you could get both of them with
Yeah, and we
one.
could kind of proof that to the Bolton and Mink study done in 2022 to see how accurate their numbers are. They did it, I think, in 5 locations along the Breezy segment. I think there was maybe one on the Ideal and Breezy segment where they counted traffic and they kind of compared, where traffic is going and which direction they turn off, for example, Ranchette Drive, and they can get a good understanding of that.
So we can absolutely work with Paul and figure out where the best place to get that and do multiple readings and try to get that data. So I think, yeah, that would be good data to have.
Certainly.
Do you want that as official recommendation from us for staff to work on? It doesn't need to go
I
to
don't
the road
think,
committee
I think
to
we've got
direct that.
interest and we can just move ahead with that. We own it, it's not really an additional cost thing. It's something that we will be doing internally, so.
Are we engaging Anderson Brothers at all, or anything to do with the traffic related to the mine?
Yeah, so we have a list of sand and gravel companies that are either utilizing the corridor currently or buying aggregate from Anderson Brothers on a, whether that be a monthly, weekly basis. And so we'll be engaging all of them during the process, obviously acting as hopefully a project partner in this and, giving them our recommendations to improve safety on the corridor, but also addressing the need for, whether that be designed to, keep traffic speeds at a minimum and/or, a heavier section for the large amount of trucks that are on the corridor, so.
Perfect. Anything else to have from?
Nothing for me.
Okay. All right, so you're looking for a motion to approve the, are we good? All right.
We're good on that
All
issue,
right.
Madam Mayor.
We're going to go to the new business. Mr. Yachansky.
Okay, these next few items, hopefully can go pretty quickly here. The first item regarding the acquisition of the Charter Communications Building. So right over here, right behind the Public Works, the maintenance building, kind of in between the ball field and that open field, you'll see that there's a 20 by 20 building that's fenced in. That land is city property. The city leased that land to Charter Communications back in 2012 for them to put that building there, and they hosted a lot of their fiber optic local connections from that building. Well, recently, with obviously technology changed, they were able to move all their fiber connections to the little box in front of the Public Works building and no longer have the need for that building. How it kind of started is we got a demo permit application for that building. We went, wait a minute, that's a nice building. So we dug up that lease, which actually is very interesting. Jerry was able to dig that up. Jerry helped draft that lease when he first got here and work with Charter on that. And actually how that lease is written is actually it leaves it up to the city. When Charter is done with that land, should they choose to vacate that lease, or when the lease expires, it's actually up to the city as to what happens to the land and the buildings and everything on it. And so we engaged them. I went out and walked through the building. The building is in wonderful condition. It's an insulated building. It's got 2 AC units on it connected to power. It's got natural gas hookups. And so our recommendation is that the city actually choose to take ownership of that building. It's at no cost to us. They just kind of deed it over to us. It's already on our land. So they really it's just a one little page document that says you can have the building. They've been paying us about $2,400 a year for the last 12 years. So for leasing our land, we've made about $25,000 and could get a free building. Really, the main costs to the city moving forward would just be maintenance of that building. Again, it's in great shape right now, just making sure it's maintained. Any utilities, again, it's a connected electricity and natural gas. Obviously, if we're not using either, we could shut them off when we're not using them. And then we would have to add it to our insurance policies, but that's a pretty minor expense to add that into our insurance policies. We don't necessarily I've talked to Joe about it, we don't necessarily have a use outlined today for that building. Doesn't mean we won't. I know Joe and I have discussed maybe even, it might even be worth looking at moving that building to the cemetery for cemetery use. But we'll definitely find a use for that building. So We're just recommending that the council choose to accept ownership of the Charter Communications building and also release Charter from their lease obligations effective immediately.
All right. Any discussion on that?
I just had one question. I noticed there's a generator there, a backup generator. Is that functioning?
I believe it is, and I believe their intent is to leave it.
Do you know how old it is by chance? Just out of
As old as
curiosity.
the building, so 12, 11
Okay.
years. But it's a natural gas generator, so
Maybe
seems in
that's
good
something
condition.
that could be repurposed.
Potentially.
for, backup for City Hall. That's all I had. I'm just curious.
Right. Do I have a motion on that?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. All right, on to the facility assessor report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So next item regarding the City Hall workshop. Again, WIDSETH should be issuing probably this week or next their final report on the City Hall facility assessment. I did meet with them 2 weeks ago, a week ago Friday, to kind of go over the preliminary of that report so they could run it through with me. A few extra things I wanted them to address in their report, and they're working on that right now, and then they'll be issuing that. And so we wanted to do a schedule a workshop. The purpose, again, the workshop is solely to go over that, let them present their findings. Baker Tilly will have some they won't have enough time to go in depth on the financing, but can give you at least some worst case scenarios by then and give you more detail later, but just have some discussion about that. And then let you have some time to kind of preliminary discuss some things. Again, no decisions obviously be made, but at least here's the information. You can have some initial discussion, maybe give us any direction you want for moving forward to the next time we talk. I did poll the council as to some availabilities. What I got back, it seemed that May 15, May 16, May 20, or May 23 were kind of the prime dates for a workshop. You do have a retreat scheduled for May 20. There was finalizing the location. We're finalizing that this week. Ideally, I'd love to do it before the retreat, just so we can kind of get that albatross not hanging over the retreat, but obviously at the end of the day, whatever works for you. If neither of these 4 dates work, we can go and look at a few others, but that's kind of what we're looking at. Time, no one really kind of indicated a specific time. My guess is more evenings, but again, so workshop, so it works for you, open to the public to attend and listen in on.
Are we presenting numbers at that?
Yes, so their report, obviously they'll go through their report, really has 4 parts. First is assessment of our current building, and then they're gonna provide, based off that assessment, essentially 4 options to you based off of it. You know, what we could do, what the first option is what this building needs, and then 2 other remodel or new City Hall options for you to consider. And they will have preliminary numbers for every single one of those options, detailed out to what each one of those costs is. So they have a whole kind of spreadsheet of it needs this area, this thing, costs this much. And they even will have in their report kind of low, medium, high priority.
After the workshop, when are we expected to see that on the agenda for voting?
That'll kind of what we'll look at the workshop is
Okay.
for you to provide the direction of what do you want next steps to be.
Okay.
Once you have the information, give you time to digest it, and when you want us to bring it back, and what additional information, if any, do you want us to bring back to you?
Are they already recommending a timeline on this?
Yep, so that'll be part of the presentation. They'll go over timelines kind of with each option of how you would move, depending on what you choose, the next steps for moving forward and what kind of how long each one of those steps takes.
Okay.
I would like to see it the 20th if everybody else agrees. We've already committed to the day for, the retreat. It makes it a long day, but it'd be nice to,
You want to add it on to the
yeah,
retreat?
that's my opinion, but I'm not sure what my peers think about that.
With due to the time constraint that we already have ourselves on the 20th, I was gonna recommend the 15th and meet specifically just on this. Or another date.
I don't know, the 16th might work for me. I don't know that I want to make the 6-hour meeting longer
Yeah.
on that Saturday with my grandma's coming up to, or my mom's coming up to watch my kids and stuff, so my husband will be gone.
Yeah, I think the evening, 15th or 16th is fine for me. Are you okay with that? If we
Yeah,
do
I'm
it?
fine.
Okay.
So just to clarify, I heard the 15th, I also heard the 16th.
Either one works.
I don't know, I might have
Do you have a preference?
I'm-
football or baseball on Mondays and Wednesdays, so that's why I'm
I got it Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Yeah.
Would the day work with this being this far out? Could we do like a 2?
During the day? No, not on the 15th, on the 16th maybe,
16th could work?
yeah.
Steve, how's your work schedule look?
I'm pretty open.
How long do you anticipate this workshop to be if it's during the day?
I would anticipate at least 2 hours. I think would give enough time for Widseth to fully go through their presentation. Baker Tilly's piece is much smaller. Again, they're just kind of giving us some worst case scenarios, and then some time for question, answer, and direction moving forward. So I would 2 hours, I would say, would probably be what you would plan for.
I can do that.
I'd need to leave a little before 3, because the kids will still be in school.
That's okay.
So, I mean, depending on what time we start. If we start at 2, that's only, I'll
Or
only get an
1.
hour in. Can we start at 1?
1.
Yeah, well, I can start whenever. This far out, I've got freedom.
Or 12 or something?
1
Yeah.
is fine.
12?
12, yeah, I don't care.
1 to 3 on the 16th.
1 to 3?
All right.
Okay, 1 to 3, 16th.
Do you need a motion for that?
Yes, please.
I'll make a motion to have the workshop on the 16th of May from 1 PM to 3, starting at 1 PM with a hopeful end at 3 PM, but we understand if it goes longer. I'll make that motion, sorry, yeah.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
And can you send out a calendar invite?
Yeah, we'll
for that?
send a calendar invite, and obviously it'll be noticed and put on social media again. That is a public meeting open to the public.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, the tax forfeited properties, Mr. Oshansky.
Yes, so this is a kind of a formality item. Every time the properties go through the full tax forfeiture process, there's a process. But once they've gone through that full process and are eligible to be sold, the first thing is they have to be first put up to public auction per state statute. And before they can, though, Crow Wing County sends a list to each jurisdiction to let them know what properties are new going on the tax forfeit rolls, and gives them an opportunity to identify them or to designate them as conservation. If a property is made in conservation, pretty much means it can't be sold and it only can be used for public use. So we looked at the attached, properties list is attached. We looked through them. I had Jerry also look through them. We see no reason to list any of them as conservation, so we recommend that the council classify all the attached tax forfeit parcels as non-conservation, which will then make them available to be purchased at the next public land auction.
When do you typically, or what kind of criteria do you go through, or does the city go through to?
We really just kind of take the list, look at the GIS and see what else is around there and what we know is going on. None of these are really adjacent to any public land. None of them are ones that we're looking at needing in the future. So we also kind of look at our needs and see if there's a reason to form it conservation. To be clear, when it's formed as conservation, it's not to save it for ourselves for something. At that point, the only kind of use is public land, like land, you can maybe put like some easements on it, maybe some parks. But generally, if you want to actually develop that land in any way, the city would also have to buy the land. So that's kind of how that goes. Conservation, again, conserves it as a natural state.
Is there a process to remove from conservation once it is deemed conservation?
Yes, there is a process, but essentially what you have to do is the council would have to, I think it's pass a resolution saying actually we don't want it as conservation anymore. And then it has to go through the whole tax forfeit process of being put on the public land sale. Because when you reserve it for conservation, it doesn't automatically be given to the city, it just stays as tax forfeit and titled as conservation, so they don't put up the rolls. So if we ever conserved a property and we said, you know what, we don't want it to be conserved anymore for whatever reason, they would say, okay, and then they just put it at the next, up for sale at the next land auction, which they do about twice a year.
I'm just curious. All right, do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, 9D.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So in light of the Board of Appeal and Equalization meeting that was held on the 19th, some conversation that I received from members of the council was to look at moving towards an open book format in the future. This is something that previous councils also discussed, just didn't end up taking any formal action on it. So again, when it comes to property valuations, the first option for a city is a local or township is a local Board of Appeal and Equalization, which is what you did the 19th. Crow Wing County comes in, people can make their appeal, you as the council make a determination, and then that goes to the county as the recommendation on that property. The option of an open book, what open book does is you don't show up. There's a time at which we would designate, the assessor would be here, people could just make appointments with the assessor and work things out directly with the assessor, and then whatever is agreed upon would go as a recommendation to the County Board of Appeals, and then people would also, again, have the opportunity to appeal at the County Board of Appeals as well, which they have now. So that's what open book is. So the difference is it just takes you out of the equation, and it's just property owners and the assessor working things out. To move to that, there's kind of two options the way to do that. The first is the formal option. Pretty much it just involves a resolution that you have to adopt by December 1st. And what it is, you would have to have a public hearing with that. So essentially you'd have a resolution saying we want to move to open book. You have a public hearing at that time, say anyone got any concerns, any comments about moving to an open book, and then you would adopt the resolution. Obviously in that resolution, as it says, you have to state how many that you want to move to open book and how many years that you want to move to open book, with a minimum of 3 years. After the initial 3 years, you'd have to renew the contract through a 3-year open book. So you could do a minimum of 3 and then renew. You could say we want to do it 10. I'm not 100% sure if you could just say indefinite, but they would want, I think they want, you would just say we want to do this for 5 years and then come back. That gives you the option to say, actually, if you hear from the community that, no, they really wanted to make an appeal to you, they didn't like the open book option, it gives you the option to go back. The other option is at the next Board of Appeals meeting in April of 2024, don't show up. That's the other option. So there's kind of the formal option and the not formal option. And then it says if there was not a quorum or a trained council member at next year's, for example, a future open book, Board of Appeals and Equalization, they would automatically hold open book right then, because again, the staff would already be there, and then next year it would automatically be open book for that next year, but not necessarily the years after that. So.
I definitely think we should go through the formal process, given the fact that I don't think I felt we were qualified to tell a resident or give recommendations of someone's property being $20,000, $30,000 less than what they've said it is. I mean, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but
I agree. I did not feel qualified, and I do think we should go through the formal process, but I don't think the council should be ruling on that or voting on that when I don't have a background in real estate or property values. Basically, we're deferring to Crow Wing County. I mean, they are the experts, and I thought they were very fair and did an excellent job. We all get tax statements. It's just the way it is.
For the past 8-9 years that we've been doing it, I felt that and if you look at most of the recommendations that we do were based on what the county would recommend
Exactly.
after the
Right.
fact finding.
You have to defer to them there.
So while it was our meeting, it was really up to the county and in a lot of respect on that. But I do like the facet of that we can put a time limit, and I think if we followed with a 3-year minimum, because if we do hear the complaints of bringing it back, we can bring it back. So I'd make a motion to move to open book officially, the right way, for the minimum of 3 years.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion
So
carried.
so I'll bring that
This
resolution.
just goes to the next.
Yeah, so I'll bring,
Next
at the June meeting, I'll bring a resolution to this fact for you to approve.
Okay, so motion carried. All right. 9E, our heart contract. that we
Yes, so
just
this
got.
is the one, as I've told you, members of council, there's only really one scenario in which I would ask you to add an item to the agenda at the meeting or after the agenda has been approved, and this is the one, which is when it's kind of an emergency situation. Up until Saturday, we took all impounded dogs to the Babinski Foundation. At the beginning of the year, you approved a contract for animal control, so our animal control officer, Mike O'Brien, has been doing the same, and we've been doing that since 2016. Assistant Administrator Ike was able to find the memo from former Administrator Joe Rudberg when the city made the switch from Hart to Babinski. The reason back then was pretty much Babinski just opened. They were inviting cities to do this with them, saying, no contract, it'll be free, we're a low-kill shelter, just bring them to us. So that's what we've been doing. On Saturday, we received, Mike O'Brien received communication from the executive director that he was not to bring any more dogs to them. Chief Sandel's been in communication with them since, and we did get confirmation today from the executive director at Babinski that, I'll just quote here, the Babinski Foundation is unable to fulfill a shelter provider contract at this time. In the past few months, we've seen an influx of unwanted animals into our shelter. Therefore, we need to have more control over our intakes to ensure we stay within our kennel licensing requirements and animal capacity. So they will not be providing service to the city of Breezy Point. Again, they said, if there's one-offs, case-by-case situation, someone from the public wants to bring in an animal, they'll consider it case by case. But right now, they're not wanting to take animals that Mike O'Brien finds in. Just kind of a context, he's brought in 4 dogs this year. He's caught, I think it's 8 or 9. So the majority of them he's been able to return to the owner either based off of the dog tag or knocking on neighboring doors and figuring out who the owner is. But occasionally he does have to take them to the pound. So that only leaves really one option. We do have to, when we impound an animal, it has to go to a licensed shelter. The only other one in our area is Hart, the Heartland Animal Rescue Team down in Baxter. And so before you is a contract from them for that service. They are a contract service. It is based off of population on that second page. There's a little bit of a typo. It should say fee would be about $4,006.50 for the annual fee. We also would be charged $17 per day for each animal for a maximum of 7 days. So if we impound an animal, they'll hold an animal for 7 days for someone to come pick up. If someone does not pick up the animal after 7 days, Hart takes legal custody of that animal and then determines if it is adoptable or not and to put it up for adoption. So in addition to the $4,000, the city would be on the hook for $17 per day up for a maximum of 7 days. And then as well, if there's any veterinary charges during that 7 days or if the animal was determined that had to be euthanized, there'd be a fee there. And then if there was animals that had to be quarantined, there's an additional fee there. Brian has been working with the director down at Hart. It does look like there's an ability for when someone goes to pick up their animal, we can hopefully take that $17 a day cost and make them pay it. So that way we would only hopefully be on the hook in case a dog doesn't get picked up. So we're hoping to be able to minimize costs there. Unfortunately, this is really the only option we have. So it's either kind of take this option or don't pick up any more dogs.
And this is what all cities are having to do? Like Babinski's no longer taking city impound?
Yeah, who else has been I'm not sure who else has been taken to Babinski, but pretty much they said no more. Mike O'Brien, he also serves, in addition to Breezy Point, he serves Brainerd, Baxter, Crosby, and Riverton. And all of 4 of those communities have contracts with Hart, and that's where we were the only one he was taking to Babinski.
Okay.
Do we notify our residents that we contract with Hart, so if a dog or
Yes.
cat goes missing, then they know?
Yeah.
That, okay.
Yeah, so I know the PD does a good job anytime we pick up an animal. Michael Bryan communicates with us, and they're good at communicating kind of that, posting a photo of the animal, that we picked it up, where we picked it up, and where people can get it.
Okay.
Where it's been impounded and where they can go find their loved animal if they think to look there, so.
Okay. So I have a motion.
I'll make a motion to move forward with the contract with Hart.
So moved, or second, sorry.
Any more discussion?
None.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. All right, staff reports.
Okay. Let me get back here. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess not too much to report right now. We're starting to get some of the projects that we've been working on. Obviously, had a presentation at Bushman. We're getting City Hall. So we're plugging away at those and starting to get some answers and be able to start working on those projects, some of those big projects. I know Joe Zierden's been working with Joe Dubel with Widseth on the sewer study project, so you'll probably be hearing about more of that later this summer. That's kind of a bigger project. So we hear more about that this summer. I will just quickly address Park Board. So next Thursday, the Park Board will be meeting and to address the task that you've given them to consider whether there are other alternative uses to the city's property in White Birch, and then to come back and make a recommendation to you. We have been working on communicating that. We've made multiple posts to our social media. We've sent out the mailers. At this point, I've met with one resident. We'll be setting up another tomorrow morning with Mr. and Mrs. Toft to meet and sit down and to discuss those, any concerns they have and what potential solutions there could be. And then the Park Board will be meeting at 5 o'clock on the 11th to consider. We're meeting with Chair Megan Zierden tomorrow, staff, to kind of figure out how she wants to run that meeting and what the process is going to look like again. So we just can be communicating with people. We've been sending lots of different information and communication onto the Park Board that they've been requesting. Joe actually offered to let the Park Board, if they wanted to tour it, that he would provide tours of the disc golf course. I think it also applies to the council. If you would like Joe to take you out there on the side-by-side and drive through it, feel free to reach out directly to him. I know he's taken one Park Board member out there already, and he took he's taking at least one other out this week. So that's kind of what's going on with that in the Park Board meeting. Again, Planning Commission also is meeting next week. They have a full agenda as well, a number of variances, and including the rezoning that I mentioned. Beyond that, I think that's all the updates I have at the moment. I'll take any questions if you have any questions.
So,
None for me.
None for me.
all right. Any
First,
cemetery?
Cemetery, yes, the commission met, we're looking at doing a landscape refresh for the cemetery. It's been 22 years since it was done, and it needs a refresh. Our volunteers are of the age now where they no longer can volunteer to maintain the cemetery. There's been a very dedicated group since inception, right, Tom? I mean, basically, but we need to transition to, have it maintained. We're expecting bids from Landsberg Landscape and Copper Creek. We also talked to Abra Landscaping in Cross Lake, but they sent an additional email saying they just did not have the bandwidth or manpower and were not interested in the work. So it's kind of where we're at now. Hopefully the bids will come in before, this May meeting, probably June timeframe, I would think. So we'll just have to wait and see. And Planning Commission meeting was canceled, and that will be this month.
Do you have anything?
I don't, I was just gonna make an announcement about the aviation days coming up on Saturday, so
Okay.
I'm surprised Mr. Bakken didn't say anything on that one, but we'll have that coming up, so
Yep, 10 to 2.
always good weather.
Yeah.
We'll see.
And then I think the only other thing I can think of is our Joint Powers Board for the fire. We had our workshop to look at capital planning, looking at how we're going to pay for new equipment and what those budgets and contracts look like. So still working through some of that, but otherwise, I think that's about it. Councilwoman Ball, you have anything?
I think you covered the fire part
Okay.
and David, you covered the finance stuff, so I think we're good.
All right. Do I have a motion to move to closed session for?
Just to be very specific on that motion, if I could have whoever makes the motion literally read what 13 says.
I'll make a motion to adjourn to closed session pursuant to state statute 13D.05 to conduct annual performance evaluation on city administrator David Chansky.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.